Good morning and welcome to this Thursday's Talking to Artists. As you can see, I'm in my beautiful studio here. This is at the cottage. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of it. So this is where I'm going to be painting and creating and everything for the next week and a bit. So I'm pretty excited about that. I can see lots of people joining. Hey, Koso, good to see you again. I haven't been down to Boston for a while, but I'm looking forward to kind of going down there again and being a part of the Copley Society of Arts. Jose, good to see you guys. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just in the process of trying to do a submission to do another solo show at the Copley Society of Art in Boston. It was so great a couple of years ago, but now, of course, not being able to cross the border has created some challenges for that. So anyway, just wanted to thank everybody for for listening to these Talking to Artists. I'm personally finding them really great. It's a great way to communicate. I'm learning so much by just having these kind of unplanned conversations with artists, which I'm really loving. So today's artist who I'm talking to is Layne Verbeek, and he does, I got this wrong yesterday, so he actually does kiln, formed, and cast glass. So the fused glass he does for his classes, but the work that he does is actually kiln formed. And I've been to his studio and it's amazing, and he's going to actually be doing this interview from his studio. So I'm just going to really quickly connect. Let's just see how I do that. Oh, no, I don't want any happy emoticons. And we will wait for Layne to join us. So hopefully everybody out there is having a great day and enjoying the summer. Hey, Layne, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Haven't seen you for so long.
Yeah, well, I think we can all say that to our friends.
Yes, I know. And it's it's kind of sad. Like even with the opening of potentially stage 3, I still kind of feel like, I don't know. I don't want to endanger my bubble,
I just don't need to go to a bar. I'm just gonna find a way,
Yeah, it's funny because
Not
even
worth
my
it.
daughter was saying that. She goes, I can't imagine the need to go dancing in a really crowded bar in the dark would override kind of the need to just try and stay healthy.
Yeah, it's gonna change everything. Like, remember the good old days when you have a birthday and you blow out the candles on your cake?
Yeah.
Now that just sounds like horrifying if you did that and then said to people, okay, have a slice, right?
I know. And it's funny too because I find even watching movies now, I'm like, oh, you guys are too close. Like there needs to be more
Yep.
distance there. And
And
it's
that's,
quite,
I mean, my background's healthcare and public education. And that's why, I mean, the biggest reason we had the lockdown was to condition us that it's a new world, that we have to behave differently. And it's
yeah.
the best, I mean, if we did that for seatbelts, we'd have seatbelt compliance years earlier than it took.
Yes, yeah. Although my father was probably one of the few that was very seatbelt compliant when I was a small child, even though nobody else had to wear one. It seemed
Yes.
really unreasonable, but now it seems totally reasonable. Yeah, I'm reading this really interesting book I've just started called Station 11, which is a Canadian writer. It's about 10 years old, but she writes about this really crazy pandemic that kind of takes over really quickly. And most of the book, I'm just starting it, but most of the book is actually what happens 20 years after this pandemic. So yeah, it's very cool.
We'll see.
Yes. So anyway, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about your kind of inspiration. I've been to your studio and I just love it. I personally have a real thing for glass. I did stained glass when I was a kid,
Right.
and just really loved it. Um, and yeah, just talk about your inspiration, maybe see a bit of your studio, and then we'll just kind of chat. Oh, I'm going to put
Well,
my timer on.
I guess my inspiration for glass came from, I don't know, a few things. I tried a lot of media over the years. I could paint decently. I could do photography pretty well. Mixed media, potteries, I did all the different media over the years, but I had a career and, I was the typical kid. Parents said, no, get a real job. Don't go to art school. So
Yeah.
I did that. And I was always, quote, creative. And then I sort of hit a hard spot a few years ago. Job changes, and I started a software company with some friends, and then that just plays with your head anyways. And
Yeah.
in the middle of all that, I went and I was trying to find a place to do welding. I wanted to weld a sculpture, a 6-foot 12-foot sculpture, and
Wow.
Toronto has all those do-it-yourself places, but no one rents you studio time or warehouse time to weld. And it was really frustrating. But in the midst of clicking, I found a place that offered Christmas ornament classes. And I thought, oh, what the hey, I'll try this. And it was, you know, it was a simple little thing. But in the midst of it, I said to the instructor, what else can you do with this? Because I always thought glass was glass blowing, stained glass. And some people know about torch work, where they work on the flame and, you know.
Right, manipulate like the tubes or whatever, right?
And things like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about kiln glass, which is what I do now. And she showed me one book and my brain proceeded to explode. And so I made a few pieces and very quickly, I just knew it was my medium. It was like, it took 50 years, but I found the medium and everything clicked. And so I started puttering with that, making a few pieces. And then it sort of snowballed. And
it's amazing, but it's amazing how, like, you know, it's just like I totally, when you were saying that you knew that you'd found your thing, I just got goosebumps because that same sort of thing happened to me in the sense that I didn't go to art, I went to art school, but I didn't go to any of the art schools that did abstract because I wasn't interested in abstract. And then I ended up in this situation where, you know, a friend of mine, her mother, Corolla Steinbrecher, was kind of doing, hey, let's go paint in the garden. And when I found out she was doing abstract, I was kind of bummed. But picked up that palette knife, and the first piece I'd found my calling. And it was just, It's like this feeling that you just know for sure that's what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of people who've come to me, I mean, because I sort of landed in the scene very quickly, and I did a lot of shows very quickly and sort of got some notice. A lot of people who are practicing art, who dabble in art, even art school people, or people who don't, say, well, how did you do it? Did it just hit you? And I mean, it was fairly sudden. I mean, the first day I didn't know that I was going to give up my career, mortgage my house, and put all the money into this. But it just felt right. And I sort of say, and one of my biggest successes in glass is something I developed that's unique. And people said, well, did it come to you like, you know, lightning? But it doesn't. I think it's listening to the little voices.
Yeah, well, I think it's also, I think there's a difference between knowing which path you're going to go on, which is kind of like the inspiration that you're going to do glass, and then building the skill sets and the techniques to be able to make it successful. I mean, that all takes time. That takes that 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah. You could, with glass is really quite limitless. I mean, I've worked in a lot of media, and I mean, there's talent, but then there's technique. Glass brings a lot of technique. I mean, if you've done wood shop, you can benefit with it in glass. If you've done pottery, if you've painted, if you've, like every artistic media lends itself, or is at your hands when you're in a glass studio. Some of the most famous contemporary glass artists are architects or interior designers, or one guy was a surgeon, and he's knocked it out of the park. And it's glass is just a vastly different, flexible, and temperamental medium. So I'll never get bored of it, I guess is the way to say it.
Well, that's good, since that's now your chosen career.
Yeah, I'll do this till the last day. It's and I'm thrilled that I found it, because like I have a friend, he's a landscape photographer, and he's known he wanted to do it since he was 20, and he's published 9 books, and his photography of Canada is going to the National Archives. And I was always envious that he was just constantly driven. He knows what he wanted to do. And I would feel that for a little while. I would do stained glass for 6 months, and they go, oh, I forgot about that. Or airbrushing, or oil painting, or what have you. And I didn't understand that drive or that need for the air of what his work brings him until it happened with glass. And a lot of people say, well, I want that. And I just say, it's never too late. Just keep exploring, because you'll find it. You never know what it is. I mean, for some people, it's, you know, coding. For other people, it's designing. Others, it's building. I think we all have talents. I think a talent is, you know, something that comes easier to you than harder. But the real talent comes from you saying, I'm going to stick with it, you know, through thick and thin. I'm going to keep
Yeah.
trying.
Well, and I think some of that too is talent, but I think some of it is also that it comes easy, but some of it is a drive, I think, to do things with your hands. Like I find a lot of times when people are striving to do something different, like it might be, I'm going to build a bunkie or I'm going to create a garden. Like I think a lot of them are around creativity, but it's also around actually, I think, physically with your hands, producing something and creating something, which in this world of kind of intellectual thinking, sometimes it's just nice to have that, I guess, a different way of using your brain and your fingers, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, I started exhibiting, selling my work and showing and so forth. And then I decided for a number of reasons. I mean, I could spend an hour just talking about the progression of the business that I have now. But I now have many students coming in. Like you were one of my first students and a gang of friends you
That
brought.
was, yeah, super
And
fun. Yeah.
yeah, and I was ironing out some kinks. It was a new group, but you were kind enough to let me experiment with you all. But you all finished with successful, you know, 11-inch bowls. And what people say every single time is, wow, I can't believe it. And they can't believe they made something that's tangible. It looks decent on the table. And it's not like, you know, pottery. You know, your first piece of pottery looks like your first piece of pottery. And you're 12 and you're 15,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Those
And
horrible
mine
things that
did
sit on
for
the
many
windowsill.
years. I'm pretty good at throwing pottery now, but I picked it up and put it down many times. It was stubborn. And whereas glass, with fused glass, which is what I teach, it's not what my sculptures are, but with fused glass, it's engineered, and glass has a zone of unpredictability from here to here, and fused glass is engineered and designed to work in this space. And if you work in that space, you can make some lovely pieces.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I really like that idea though of also it's a combination of controlling the variables so people are going to come out with something that's successful, but also giving them enough of the creativity that they can actually feel like it's theirs. I'm not just trying to create a Layne piece that looks like yours, it looks like their own. And I
right,
think,
and
that's what we try and do with creative adventures as well, like it's kind of find your
I have
creativity.
I mean, a certain percentage, but I have many students who come in totally said, well, I'm just doing this once. Someone bought me a gift, or we just
Yeah.
tried this for shits and giggles. Let's try something new. And it's always a surprise to the ones that say, wow, I'm coming back.
Yeah.
And the ones who come back, we have something called Open Studio, so you can work at your own pace and so forth. And I just give guidance as they progress. And these people, all ages, all skill levels, all kinds of careers, and they come back again and again. And then I know they're hooked because one day they walk in, come down the stairs and go, what if I did this? And
That's
that's
cool,
when I
huh?
know they're hooked, because they're starting to understand the engineering of glass.
Yeah.
And you have to honor the mistress of glass. You have to honor its technical challenges. Glass will break on you if it's not, right?
Yeah.
But once people get that, get it under the skin, I tell them, you're just manipulating mass. You're working with a medium. And I throw glass around and pick it up and do all these things, and I forget that it's glass, because I have the goal of what I want to make. And that's when you know it's in your system. You know what I mean? It's like when you're
Yeah.
painting and that brush is just an extension, just like the pen, or now your finger on
Well,
your
and it's intuitive. Yeah, it becomes intuitive. But I also just think, I just wanted to go back to what you said before. I think it's just an amazing experience too. You can have somebody who really kind of thought they weren't creative, and I agree, like everybody's creative, but they produce something that totally shocks them, and then it takes them in a completely different path, and it's kind of cool to be part of their transition or
right.
part of
Look at
their
this.
growth.
Last weekend I had a family of 5 adults, and one woman, I don't know what her job is, but she's in her early 20s. This is her first piece.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's stunning.
Wow, it
I
is
mean,
lovely.
it's stunning, and she hasn't picked it up yet. So I'm showing
Well,
you
whoever
all
you
her.
are, come and get it. Otherwise, someone else will buy it from you.
But that's a beginner piece,
Yeah.
and so glasses. I mean, there's a number of things I helped shape it a bit after the first firing. But this piece she could gift to anyone, or you could keep on your table for years to come. And
Yeah.
I think that's people that get hooked on glass. You have a really easy win. It's a really good first win. Your first painting is like, paint by numbers or what have you, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe you threw some paint and you had a couple lovely splashes that worked out. But glass gives you that first win. And I think, I know from my students, and the word of mouth is, if I could put one big billboard out, it would be saying, it's easier than it looks, all ages, and certainly you could go much further and you can, I carve 20-kilo pieces that take hours and hours and hours to make, and then I might slip and drop it.
Well, that's I know. It's like when you do the outdoor art show, I think it was last year, and all of a sudden the wind and you hear that breaking glass, and you're like, oh, it's painful to hear.
Yes,
That's what happens sometimes.
You've heard my stuff hit the pavement. It's happened
Yeah.
2 or 3 times.
It's horrible. It's heartbreaking.
But I learned very quickly to just keep moving. I don't saw people say, what do you want?
Yeah.
Lay down and have a little cry, and it's like, no, that's the medium. That's what I signed up for.
Well, and I think that's sometimes reality. I know I had a piece that was sold to a gallery when I was showing in New York, and then this woman with these huge diamond rings came up to this resin piece and was like, does this scratch? And I'm like, well, diamonds pretty much scratch everything, and yes, you've just scratched this piece that was already sold, and now I've got to ship it back to Canada and re-resin it and ship it back to New York.
I have a cold working area that's full of equipment that's highly customized, expensive, and all of it is diamonds. Because diamonds is what cuts glass, diamonds and water.
Yeah.
So
you're in your studio now, right? Can you give us a tour? And I'd love to see, so this is the studio you do your fine art glass in, as well as where you do your classes, right?
Right. Toronto rent. Hello, I can't have 2 places. I can barely have this one. COVID is testing my patience.
Yes.
Yes. So I designed the studio to do my work. I just did a very large installation for 7.5-foot panels for Tyndale University, and that took months of work. And I have some photos on my site, but they haven't had the big unveiling yet because it was with COVID. But we were able to do that in part of the space. 2 of us worked on it for 3 months.
I saw your videos. It was really cool to watch that progress.
I wanted, because they wanted to have something to show people. They couldn't bring their team along to see the progress in the studio. And I have a couple other commissions, so the studio supports that type of work. But I designed it originally for classes, but given COVID, we had to do major renovations. So you may recall you could roam most of the studio, but now with COVID, I had to refigure out what people used and move it all to the front, erect plastic barriers and the like. The barriers are put away, but I'll walk around a bit here.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I just love seeing the inside of artist studios. I think there's just something kind of cool about where the magic happens.
Yeah, well, I play with this one, so I have to go in reverse. Okay. All right, so that's the entrance. When students come to take classes, they work on these benches. So everything you need about glass is customized. So they're cork top benches that allow you to do your work. And the tables I can turn and hold up to 10. This here, we call this the candy store because all the glass has all these lovely colors. And so this is just 80 colors of the glass that we work with. The manufacturer makes about 160. So
yeah, I remember that being a lot of the fun in terms of, it's not one color of turquoise. You could choose 7 or 8 different colors of turquoise.
Right. And then the other half are all transparent. So when I exhibit, a lot of people say, is this glass? I can't believe it, because they don't expect all these colors. But it's all special engineered. There's a long story. And then here are a bunch of tools, and everything's numbered because I'm behind a barrier. And I need to see people, well, what you need is in drawer 2. And so there's been a lot of adapting, right down to this special fan that draws out the air, that changes the airflow in the studio.
Oh, wow.
So that took a lot of engineering, but we did that just to put extra caution in for the customers. And then I have a mini gallery space. So that's my work. Some of those pieces there.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, give us a close-up of some of your work. I love your work. I bought that one. I haven't bought one for myself yet, but I bought one for my daughter Miranda, and she just loves. Yeah.
So this is called kiln form glass. So this took quite some time, and if I spin it, you can see that there's a design on the back. This is where you open the kiln and stir the glass at 1500 degrees. So it's
And is that
hot orange golden.
you talk about glass swarf, I think, in your website. Is that what that is?
No, so glass swarf is the thing I developed, and it's like this. It looks like lava, but it's actually all glass. And this is a recent piece that really shows the swarf. So that looks like granite or stone.
Yeah.
But that's actually all glass.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And that sort of attracts the jurors. And but most pieces I make with swarf are the first to go because it's so unique. And I can incorporate in various pieces. So these large pieces are called kiln formed or sculpted glass. That little pedal there is cast. So it's an open face casting where you make a sculpture in clay. Then you make a mold over that, pull the clay out and cast the glass.
I think you did like the Ganesh sculpture. He was done that way, right?
Yeah. I'll show you.
I remember watching
actually, that. He's a lost wax casting, which is a fourth method of kiln glass. So this is open face because the back is flat.
Okay.
So your mold is open and then you just let it melt in, like a cake pan.
Right.
That's a copy of Ganesh. I made two just in case because it was an important commission. So the original wax sculpture is on the left. That's the original I sculpted. The client liked it. Then I made molds. And then that Ganesh, she's not quite finished, but they have the original.
Oh, that's so neat.
And that was in the kiln for
I didn't realize you could do lost wax with glass. Like I sort of usually associate that with brass.
Right. So lost wax is an ancient technique where any mold where you can't pull out the original copy, because there's undercuts and shapes, becomes lost wax. So lost wax includes jewelry, bronze sculpture like the large ones we see in parks, and glass. It's basically the same technique. So I can take my sculptures or my molds to a bronzer North Toronto and say, give me a bronze version of Ganesh.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I could make a sculpture and make it in glass, silver and bronze all at the same time. And then I could actually cast a resin or an acrylic version in the same mold. So anything that will set in a mold. This is bullseye glass. So this is all the glass that we use. These are the larger pieces. These are just different samples of the types of things you can do in fused glass. This was a technique I came up with. And people don't believe it's glass, but it has an amazing range. And then there's different pieces. So that's the area where students are. I have a photo booth because I have to document and, take pictures. I can't just take a picture and crop it. This is frit. So this is all those colors crushed into small pieces. And we use it for a lot of different things. These are finished pieces that students will be picking up this week. Different materials. What else is here?
And
this is the kiln room.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens.
Hot. Yeah, for glass people, the schedules you use for the kiln is almost our secret recipes because you can sculpt something as much as you want, but once it gets into the kiln, a lot of things can happen. So learning the kiln is the hardest. It's a lifelong process, really. You continue to develop it. It's not like ceramics where you fire, up to the top, it vitrifies and then cool it. Glass takes a lot. Here are some finished pieces of students. These are all first-time students. The kiln looks ratty, but after 25 years, it still runs. And
so they're just still cooling, or are they that's just where you're storing them?
Yeah, they're cooled. I just opened them up this morning when I came in and they cooled. So we'll grind a round bottom on the bowl so they stay level and wash them and wrap them up for pickup. And then this area, it's hard to interpret, but all this equipment is for carving and cutting glass. So these discs, just these discs are 500 US a piece. Those are the diamond discs that I grind on.
Right, and that's really that's more for your work, not for your classes.
That's right. But I teach more advanced classes of casting. So I do have people who are casting now and carving and polishing their pieces. And so they work their way up. I'm the only studio outside of a school or a professional league or a guild that offers grinding and cold work to students that I know of in North America. Because
oh, that's great.
Anywhere else that offers fused glass just offers that. It doesn't offer all that other equipment is a big undertaking. I'm just going to go back
And so I
to
can
the folder here.
So I can see that you've basically modified your actual studio so that you can deliver classes within for COVID. And I'm assuming it sounds like you're behind a plexiglass shield, and your artists or your guests are all have to be within a bubble and it's one social circle. But one of the other things I thought was really amazing, especially at the beginning, is how quickly you pivoted to do these kind of glass at home kits. Like everyone was trying to struggle with how to continue to do some of this teaching. But you want to talk about that a bit?
So it's on my website, and I have a lot of examples on Instagram. I call it glass in a box. It appeared quick, but I struggled with it a long time because having worked in this software company, we started a software company, and we've all read that in software companies, you know, it's you constantly move, try to anticipate.
Build the plane as you're flying it.
right. Fake it till you make it, all that type of stuff. So that was sort of already in my DNA. And I was facing down the barrel of rent I'm in a downtown warehouse. I mean, rent is crazy. And so I just saw business folding, an art school nearby closed very quickly. And I just thought, I can't let that happen to me. I don't want to sit back in a desk. My inspiration was to not have a desk job, as opposed to I want to make the store work. So,
well, that's a good driver.
Yeah, and I saw restaurants were starting to offer food, packed food or takeout. You know, restaurants were adapting and fronting the stores. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that with glass. But my first thought was, well, who's going to want to cut glass on their kitchen table without instruction? I already have people have anxiety, and I walk them through it. But how am I going to do that remotely? And then I thought, well, the tools, it's over $120 worth of tools just to start. And am I going to buy all those tools and send them to people's homes? And who knows? And then it was like, well, as you recall, when you make your first piece, you cut a piece of glass. I give you a base piece of glass, and you cut all this other glass, glue it on top, and carry it very carefully to the kiln room to be fired. Well, how am I going to transport that from Richmond Hill or Oshawa? And so forth. So it wasn't just, it was a little bit of an idea that I kept saying no to. I kept struggling with it. Oh, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I just worked through each problem. And then, oh my gosh. And then I had to order special glue. And the only place I could order that was open to glass suppliers was in Colorado. And I had to have that shipped. And then I had to order tools. And then I needed boards. And I had to find a supplier that wouldn't sell me, you know, if I call Uline, they want to sell me a pallet of boards. I needed 10 boards, things like that. It came right down to, I designed the sticker, the labeling, safety warnings, right? Don't keep out of reach of children, all these things. And it was so much. And then I designed all the instructions. They're all visual. Then YouTube videos. I've never done YouTube. Look at me, I don't want to be on YouTube. But I did an hour of YouTube videos. I did all this, and it came down to the day that Sam, who works here, and I were trying to put glue in these little bottles because you only need this much glue. We don't need to send them, you know, the $75 glue bottle. Right. Well, we couldn't get the glue into the bottles because it formed air bubbles. And we were arguing with each other. We tried 7, 8 ways. We got turkey basters. We got syringes. We got, I mean, it's to this day to pour this extra thick glue. It's a special glass glue. It came down to that little piece. If I didn't get the glue right, I couldn't sell the kits. Finally, we got through it all, and the kits took off. Who do you want to send it to? Oh, Siri, be quiet. So it did take off. It took off really well. And what I encourage people, no one else is going to develop glass at home kits, but what the process did helped me in many ways. It's going to help me more. It's already given me ideas for Christmas because Christmas is my biggest time. I'm not going to be able to have the same number of people come in and make ornaments. So how am I going to do glass in a box for Christmas? I realized if COVID was gone today and I was back to my normal operations, glass in the box will give me students and people who don't want to drive downtown. I had a woman order 6 for her family in Woodbridge, and they had a birthday party with it.
So can you talk a little bit about, more specifically about, so how does it actually work? So if I go to your website and say, hey, Layne, I want a glass in the box, what happens next?
So what you do is I offer 11 different projects for adults and kids. You pick one that you like. They're all beginner projects, and they're all priced accordingly. And then you pay for delivery. So if you're in Toronto, it's $20, and further out it's more. If it's 2 or 3 kits to one home, it's 1 delivery fee. And there's a 3-visit delivery because I need to deliver the box to you. You make your piece, put it all back in tight, so your unfinished piece comes back to me. So I have to go pick it up again, excuse me, and then when it's finished, I deliver it. So it's a 3-visit per home, and that's included. And amazingly, between my videos and the instructions that are included, I average maybe 1 text question per customer, and these are all new customers. And when I started,
that's pretty good.
I thought it would be existing customers, even someone like you who've done one, say, well, I already have an inkling, so I feel comfortable doing it at home. Well, 95% of my customers are all new. So when you think you know something, it's going to teach you a little more lesson, right? And that's the marriage of, I mean, I think this could extend to, I mean, I've shared this with other friends who are artists, and I've asked advice. It's, we make art. We happen to have a talent to make art. We call it a talent, but people have talents in all kinds of fields. Right. We have to advertise. We have to tell people about us. And so, I mean, my biggest investment is advertising glass in a box, and also figuring out the message that, hey, you can make glass at home. You're not bringing a furnace and rolling 2,000 degree glass. I'm rambling here, but you get the idea.
No, and I think that it's one of those things. I think that, like, for example, I went through, so, you know, Angela and I, when we do these creative adventures, and they're designed for non-artists in the same way that a lot of your stuff is. And it definitely, you have to really force yourself to think differently, because there are certain things that when we first started, we just kind of assumed. Like, I assume people are going to know how to hold a paintbrush. I assume they're going to know which colors are going to go together. I assume that people have a basic understanding of color mixing. And then you realize, well, that's totally not fair, because if you haven't done it since, you know, you were 7, of course you don't remember that stuff. And so we found the same thing with each successive adventure we did. And so I do one with my little treasures, which is like my Monet pieces. Like, I can now direct people so that they're not producing one of my pieces, they're producing their own interpretation, but they have the skill sets now to be able to create something that they're usually really, really happy with. And I now start to recognize, okay, I can see you're struggling with color. You don't know which color goes together. Or you're struggling with how to start, or you're afraid of screwing it up. And that's all part of the learning, I think, for us as artists, but it also helps us to make, create a better experience for people who consider themselves not to be creative.
I actually developed, I never taught before, actively taught before I opened the studio too. So that was another big anxiety, not to mention all the other things I'm balancing. I come at it a different way with glass. I tell everyone, even artists, forget what you know today, because glass is such a different medium. It's going to surprise you. It's not going to do what you expect. And you're making something in 3D, not 2D. And my goal, my mission, isn't to teach people glass. It's to teach adults that they have creativity. And I use a lot of, different ways, depending on the person, to help them find colors. I think a lot of people underestimate the skills they already have. So I agree. Say to someone, a woman will say, well, what am I going to do with these colors? And I said, well, if you're assembling an outfit with a scarf, would those colors go together? And no, she instantly knows how to change the colors. Or I might educate people the difference between warm and cold tones of glass, or say, all those tones are cool, but you have one hot one. Is that what you want? And I don't say it's right or wrong. I have a lot of people who start and say, is this right or wrong? And the only right or wrong I correct them on is what technically will happen to the glass in the kiln. It's wrong to have this much glass hanging over the edge. And I have found over time that approach has actually made people want to come back more. It's helped them sort of put their anxieties away. And I say to them right at the beginning, I'm not going to ask you to draw a house. I'm not going to ask you to draw a turtle.
Yeah.
And so take the pressure off. And if people are really stressed, I say, just pick the colors you love and cut them till they fill the top. And
Yeah,
then
well,
they
and
discover.
we do sort of the same thing with creative adventures. And one of the things I noticed, even when on your website, it's about embracing kind of serendipity and embracing the unknown. And we try very much to encourage our adventurers to do the same thing, because it's like you can't always control everything, and artists can't control everything. And part of creativity is just intuitively finding your path to things. And so, like you say, it's like pick the colors you love. Chances are they're going to go together. Like, be free with it. Just enjoy the process, and the piece will be infused with that kind of that energy. But don't be so stressed at the beginning of having to produce something perfect, because that's kind of the death knell of
Right.
enjoying
Yeah.
yourself and having any creativity, right?
Right. And and I'll tell people I started by making Christmas ornaments a few years ago. And when they understand that's my progression, they say, okay, this, it sort of takes out the intimidation.
Yeah.
My regular students, I'll say, just make a few tiles. You don't have to, I'd love them to make a bowl each time. It's more money, but I'll say, make 4 or 5 tiles with 4 or 5 techniques. We'll fire them and then see what you like. Glass requires a lot of control. Like people say, oh, you must put it in and get surprised every time. I can't afford surprises. Like one of those pieces, just raw materials, is $400 or $500.
Yeah.
Not counting the equipment and the overhead and everything. So I'm not going to throw, $500 of glass in the kiln just for fun.
Yeah, but there must be an aspect too of you control as much as you can, and with your experience now, you know which colors are going to go together and how to form them or how to craft them or how to build the molds. But to a certain degree, I'm just guessing there must be some part of the process when it gets fired that is sometimes a happy,
Oh,
I don't know,
sure.
result.
I have happy coincidences.
Yeah.
I think it's down to about 15-20% or less. Like the vast majority, the color blocking and the stuff is where I want it to be.
Yeah.
And for kiln forming, I work to make a big hunk of glass that has designs and patterns and colors I like, or a theme I'm trying to go for. But the cold working, which is what sets this apart from, it's sculpture more than glass making. I've had other glass people tell me, refer to yourself as a sculptor, not as a glass artist.
So for the cold working, I just want to kind of clarify. So cold working is working on an existing piece of glass, and then you're grinding it and shaping it in the same way you do stone, right?
Right, without the heat.
Yeah.
And some of the same equipment we use to carve and polish stone, we use for diamonds, or we use for glass, sorry. Only it's more elaborate, and I could cut and carve stones in my cold working area. I would be ruining it for glass, but I could do it very quickly. It's
Right.
Stones are cut with either a form of carbon or diamonds as well.
And water, right? I know when I
Lots
see
of
like
water.
Irene Sturko and stuff when she's grinding, she always has lots of water, I guess, to keep everything moist and
That's
not
why
burn out.
cold work. And anything you put in a kiln, when you work in glass blowing, we call it hot work because it's a hot job. In kilns, we call it warm glass. It's not warm. It's the same temperature as lava when we take it up, but relative to glass blowing, it's 300 degrees cooler, so we call it warm glass. And cold working is anything you grind and polish, even our lenses and our glasses. When a lens maker takes a simple puck of glass and they grind it to the shape for our prescription, that's cold working. And they use the same equipment we do, but much more precise, computer controlled and measured and so forth. And that,
Right.
so our glasses are cold worked.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Glasses everywhere, and we forget. Like people don't know if lightning. You can buy these. They're called. I think they're called fulgurites.
Yeah, when it hits the sand.
Yes, it will make a tube of glass, and you can buy those on Amazon and so forth. And so people say, is glass man-made or artificial, or man-made or natural? Probably natural because lightning would hit it, and it's a very raw glass because of the silicon stuff. It's a pretty neat medium. It's pretty endless what you could do. So if I get bored, it's not the medium, it's me.
Well, maybe you'll be so old that you won't have to worry about it by then, right?
That's right.
I think, and I think also you're always going to be moving forward. That's what we do as artists, right? Like you develop a certain level of skill and a technique, and then your first thing is like, but what else can I do with it? And where else can I take it? And what more can I do to push that boundary, right?
And yeah, I mean, from the business side of things, I think anyone who wants to sell their work, um, I've had many people, and we all share, we're in the tent all those days at shows, and we're sharing ideas with each other. And
yeah,
I almost do it overboard, but I track all my customers. I track what they bought, when they bought it. Every piece I've ever made is documented, weighed, measured, photographs before and after. And it becomes this rich trove that you can go back to, because if you want to keep going, I mean, many times people say, well, I'm buying this, it's going to make you rich. And it's like, no, you're just paying more for my habit, right?
yeah,
You've covered the rent for another month. Now I can go play again. And if we want to keep doing that, which is, in the end, we're all kids and we want to just keep finger painting.
keep playing, but not have too much stuff in your studio, right?
Right.
You want to produce it and then have it out.
The cost of the equipment in this place is nuts.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, why have I never seen this kind of glass? Well, no one spends this kind of money. There's a very few places. But, really, a lot of artists, I hear artists say, well, here's my card, but don't go to my website. I haven't updated it recently. Like, one trick is I tell in every email I announce shows, I tell people there's always new pieces. Even if it's 2 weeks later, and it's in the same city, I tell people, you know what? I'm going to have new pieces at every show. You just keep it moving. It forces you to keep it moving. It forces you to innovate.
I think it also, frankly, it forces people to buy when they like stuff, as opposed to, like, I have people sometimes where they'll come back 2 years later. It's like, I saw that piece at Art Walk in the Square. I'm like, oh my God, that was 2 years ago. It's been gone for ages. Like, I can do a commission for you, but do you honestly think I can afford to have pieces sitting around for 2 years that don't sell? Like, you can't.
Well, if I have a piece for 2 years and I get bored of it, I smash it and remelt it and turn it into something else.
That sounds sad. You shouldn't do that. Sometimes you just have children that have it take longer to find their homes.
But you have to embrace that. That's why people come back for glass, because the rules are really different. I keep it next to my table, and I mean, 99% of the time, a student's first piece comes out without a problem. I think I've had 2 bad pieces in 2 years, but I wish they break pieces. I want them to get over that fear. It's just glass. It's just stuff. And
well, and that's kind of, I guess that's part of the fun of it. Once you're not so emotionally invested in the piece, right? Like, I think I don't know about you, but for me, the part I love about the painting that I do is actually the process of it and the feeling of doing the process. And so the end result is kind of the end result that's based, for me, on the experience of the creation.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if it gets damaged, it kind of sucks, but it's not sort of the end of the day, end of the world.
I mean, we're not standing in those white tents in 30-degree weather because we're making money, right?
But
we're
they are fun.
Because we love it. Yeah. But when someone buys a piece and saying, we're putting this on the mantle in our house, that money comes and goes, right? That money pays your hydro bill for the month. But that piece is on their home, and they chose to make that a centerpiece. That's about as good a reward it is. I mean, we tell our kids,
I agree.
Hey, Sarah, you made this lovely piece. I'm putting it on the fridge. Well, I'm over 50, and people buy a piece of my glass. It's not going on their fridge, but it's going on their mantle. It's the same dynamic.
And not only is it going on their mantle, but it's also one of those things that's now part of a child's history of the pieces that they have, and it becomes part of the legacy, and it gets passed on to generations, hopefully. And I just think that is so neat that you can produce something that will hopefully outlive us as artists.
Right.
It's kind of an ongoing legacy.
And going back to way at the beginning, we were talking about people. You were saying you like to work with your hands. People. I mean, we are all so stuck at staring at screens, and I'm never going to say, hey, did you see this amazing PowerPoint I did? We're not going to want to share that with people. Hey, Mom, look, but with a piece of glass, or anything you make, it's tangible. It's something you hold. And I think that's primal in all of us to build.
Yeah, I think so too.
And if you come here, you can make something, you can hold it, you can, I mean, the funny one is, it's more with teenage boys, when they make the bowls, the first thing they text me back is, can I eat out of it? And they all put this 10-inch
Cereal?
bowl. Cereal, absolutely.
I used to have a teenage boy.
Their only goal is to make a bowl for a bowl of cereal, like a big ass.
That's really big, yeah.
Yeah, but if that's what it takes, come in, you know.
And I think I'm actually out of time. I think I probably over chatted. I'm hoping I haven't lost the opportunity to kind of post this, but I want to thank you so much. And we didn't even get to talk about all your awards and your shows and all that stuff, because you've got all of that stuff too. But thank you so much. Enjoy, and I'll post your information so people can learn more about your glass classes and your art. Cheers. Okay, bye. Thanks, Wade. Okay, bye.